4.0 was a big challenge across the world for all the operators. So number one, 5G is going to help in solving that problem because new spectrum is available.
Yeah.
The second problem that 5G is going to solve is slicing. There's something called network slicing, which was not available up to 4G, which means the requirement for a mining industry is very different from a manufacturing automobile industry, from a power grid, which requires very different network resources. So these are two things that 5G will, I think, help in, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, just again, thanks. I think that was a very, very comprehensive response. And just again, back on the previous point of security, right? I think the other aspect that we are seeing is when people talk about 5G, right? They ask, why is it different, right? What is the benefit, right? So we have kind of started looking at some of the features, right? If I go down one level, right? We're talking about both the transport, the control, the user plane, complete encryption. We're talking about the IMC encryption. And so if you see recent survey in India, and one of the reasons why people are looking forward to 5G from enterprise is quality. So I think that is the most important thing. If you're looking for a network which is to be provided for a business-friendly kind of a situation, maybe 5G is not the right network for you. But the moment you're talking about moving into a business critical to a mission critical, then definitely you need to look at 5G. That's number one. The other thing, coming back to the opportunity in India on 5G, I think the question is more in terms of what does the enterprise want to do. So, and I think as Amit rightly said, it's something that 4G can address today. For example, if you talk about the biggest challenge on shop floors is mobility. So you put up a Wi-Fi there is an AGV connected, it stops right in the middle because it is no session mobility. So I think that's the most basic thing that people, so if you have a mobility use case, it makes a lot of sense, right? Then you go one step further, right? I think we heard a little bit on the location. So right now, when we are engaging with some of the enterprises, they are talking about going down to a centimeter level accuracy because the robot should know exactly where to pick and place, right? That's second. Then with some of the advanced manufacturing companies, right, who are actually, I think interesting, we spoke about release 17 and 18. They are actually wanting UR LLC right now in India. So we're talking going down sub 10 millisecond accuracy. And then again, with TSN, we're talking about bounded latency. So I'll tell you, if you have a Wi-Fi network with 3 devices connected, you will get a fantastic performance. Just connect another 100 more and see what happens, right? And that's where 5G can actually guarantee that bounded latency, that your latency will not be worse than this. So when they put all these things in mind, you realize the fact that this is kind of changing the paradigm, right? Running a process automatically or remotely, no matter where you are, right? The applications could reside on the cloud or the edge because the latency would be coming into play there. So I think with keeping that in mind, we have done a study globally and for India. We are predicting an overall uplift of up to $36 billion by 2030. This is across all segments, all sectors, and specifically for our customers, the operators. We are predicting uplift of $17 billion USD over and above their existing business. This is only from 5G, right? And this is across network connectivity, this is across edge and orchestration, moving all the way to SIN applications. So huge opportunity, right? The only thing that we need to realize is we should be trying to solve a problem and not trying to sell a solution. So I think the consulting, and I think we talk about the players, is very important because they really want you to solve the problem and not try to kind of make a technology pitch. So I think that a very...
Thanks. I think as KPMG, I mean, we started off as junior consultants and we grew to partners, but what you just said is like the heart of everything. The customer is in the center and try to solve the problem for that customer. It will lead to some decisions on technology, some decisions on network, some decisions on the cloud, which cloud is suited, on-premise, etc. All those things happen next. And that, if you put together, does return and ROI and a payback, which is very much acceptable. So thank you for making that point. Customer centricity, I think we'll all agree on that. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to pose 2 or 3 questions, now is a great time. We are roughly about 11 minutes out. So if there are any immediate burning issues, others, I have a few questions which are left over from our original list. We can pose them. I'm going in 5. Just a show of hands if there's anybody. On 5G, manufacturing, I missed my lunch, I need lunch coupon. That question is not eligible here. Okay, fine. So I have another question then for you, which is on chipsets. And we will divert the question to just randomly picking one person from this audience. I'm not picking anyone, this is randomly. What would be our response? And I know that India is going to start manufacturing chips at some point in time. It's on paper, it will get formalized. Until then, how should India go about this? What should we do? And what is Qualcomm doing? How do you deal with this also?
Yeah, so we are Qualcomm, first and foremost, is a fabless company. We invent technology and we get it manufactured, like I said, manifested in say, silicon from foundries that are located.
Will you hold the mic a little closer? You just have to hold a little closer, I think that will
Okay,
work better.
is this better?
Yeah, much better.
So we use, Qualcomm being a fabless company uses foundries that are established all over the world. It takes a lot of investment to set these factories up. We welcome the setting up of these foundries in India. Very good initiatives for India to become self-reliant. over time on silicon. Silicon and electronics constitute a very large import bill for India, and therefore reducing that reliance on imports is important. And we'd be happy to evaluate some of these foundries for Qualcomm in the future as and when they come up and they get matured. It is a step function, which means that there's going to be a lot of lessons learned for these companies that are setting up. But we are very confident, and other countries have shown that it can be done. Again, it's a long investment cycle, a long gestation period to get it right. But I feel that India has taken a step in the right direction in terms of getting these foundries up.
Okay. Would anyone else like to answer?
No, I'm just saying if you don't get phones on time, if you don't get network equipment, Qualcomm is to blame.
Phones, cars, devices, smart TVs, events like this to be telecast all over the world, sure. So a lot of diversity in our business. Just one last closing thought from each one of you. We talked about standardization. We talked about the importance of standardization for improved security and safety, and it leads to some productivity, efficiency improvement, etc. We talked about some methods that India and the world is taking towards making the standards more robust, etc. There's a lot of diversity in our business. What would be those 3-4 work steps that would help any particular end client or consumer choose? What would be that frame? Let's leave our audience with some kind of a frame which says these are the 3-4 steps that we should take in the order of priority, which will allow us to arrive at a conclusion that this is the best system for me or this solution suits me best. It does not have to be 5G. If you don't have that kind of application, it may be 4G, it may be 5G, it could be private network, it could be borrowed network, etc. Let's think of a way and give our audience what would be those first 4-5 steps. So any quick thoughts?
See, I'm going back to the perspective that Amit Marwa talked about, that culling of spectrum is available now with 5G. 4G also, there is enough and more which can be done on Industry 4.0. Let me tell you, the application on Industry 4.0 in 4G, 90% of the application can run on 4G. And what we have seen, perhaps an observation, we've been interfacing with so many customers all across, the adaptability of that particular piece is primarily, again, the cost has become a biggest inhibition as such. But I think we'll have to learn the way the mobility sector propelled and got into a different mode altogether. Today, if we have the amount of penetration of mobile phones in the country is enormous. We have perhaps a case study across the world that we have so much of mobile penetration all across. And there is enough and more to be done within India to be doing that, because there is enough and more industries available. If we perhaps look at this, perhaps I would also request all the manufacturers out here, sitting out here, if you can look at reducing costs, because there is economies of scale available. There is a market available. How do you proliferate that? It is not only the spectrum. We all have to participate cohesively in this. It cannot be that spectrum was perhaps an area. We also have to look down, how do we massify this, where the costs have to come down, maybe localized production. There are ways and means of looking at that. There are economies of scale which have to come out into being. If I may say from a customer standpoint, if I'm an end customer is looking at 2-3 major things, which is looking at, one is the predictive analysis. How and when and will, wherever there is a production loss happening in an industry, when the machine fails. Now the machine if you can predict the machine is going to fail in such and such time, and you take steps for that, his production is taken care of. There's a direct cost benefit which will come out of it.
Correct.
There's an immediate direct cost benefit which comes out of it. So there are 2-3 perspectives, let me tell you. One is the direct cost benefit which is coming there. Second is an indirect cost benefit also which comes out. There are so many other areas which come into it. Let me just give you an example, and this is worldwide across, and I'm sure Pawan will agree with this, so will Amit, that, in Western world also, when they deployed private networks, the first use cases were 3-4 only for any private network to be deployed. But today they have grown to 800 use cases in one particular private network.
In one network.
So the ROI the prima facie, the ROI will look from a predictability perspective. Post that, you can keep on growing and growing. You just have to get into it.
Yeah,
the innovation is a key mark. What is the problem statement we are solving? We'll have to look at that, and that's it. End of story. That's the puzzle out here, is how to solve this. And maybe everybody of us have to contribute there to proliferate.
So give few use cases to start, but create that platform on which incrementally many other innovative employees will come up with ideas to help grow and reach that goal. You said 800 use cases in one private network. Our next goal will be 1000. You want to add something to that? Just pass on the microphone to. Thank you.
Yeah, and I fully agree with what Saibal said. So basically, there are two kinds of enterprises we see, right? Some of them who have actually figured out what they want to do. They understand the benefit of connectivity, and they want a very, very strong, robust. Some of them have asked us for a 1 Gbps connectivity across a 300 or 400 acre area. Look at the expectations, right? Why? Because they have been digging for fiber. It's tough getting the right of the way. Wi-Fi doesn't reach there. Tetra does, but it gives you only voice. So look at it, it's a great opportunity to actually go and create this backbone for the enterprise. But these are enterprises who are a little bit more mature in the journey, so connectivity for them is a given, and they will figure out the use cases. And then you have enterprises who are still early in the journey, so they want to kind of start the discussion with use cases. They want to see something very low, start with the low hanging fruit, and then of course build on top of the connectivity. And you will always come across both these cases, right? So typically for a large enterprise, for example, if you have an enterprise having 15 different manufacturing centers across India, the way they typically do it is to create a lighthouse. So they will pick one factory and they will pick one area where they see an immediate benefit. They will deploy some use cases there, scale and start at a small scale. Because see, the challenge is if you start at a big bang approach and kind of things don't go well, then you have probably jeopardized your program. And I think the ecosystem partnership is also very important. We see a huge role for obviously all of us here on the dais, but also the cloud players. A lot of ASPs as well, some of the innovative companies providing solutions around drone and mobility. So I think where that ecosystem can come together and exist, and who can bring that ecosystem together, whether it's the SI or whether it is Airtel or Vodafone or Jio, and all of us together, I think that is one of the key, because you cannot do it all by yourself. I think the day we realize that and we are willing to collaborate, that makes it even more better.
I think that's true. So my previous job was and continues to be in large-scale project and program implementation. And exactly what you said. So my first experience with IoT in 2016, where we were putting armbands on welders to measure the movement and the heart rate, and then the amperage which is used by the welding machine. We found that there were so many cases where we were not able to use them because there's a lot of interference with all the heavy infrastructure and the structural steel, which was confusing the networks. We have come long distance from there, but clearly I'm seeing that we need to create a very good combination of the 5-6 key stakeholders to come together and find a way to sustain those 5-6 POCs that you spoke of, and then make it productive for the rest. Okay, any last closing notes before we close for the day?
Just one comment or input here is, both at Reliance Jio, Airtel, and even at Vodafone, we have brilliant Industry 4.0 use cases. There are literally smart factories which have been put there. So all of you welcome to visit those and learn a little bit more about how this is happening in the real world.
Okay, so thank you. You have close one.
I just have one
Same here.
point. We have tied up with Intel. Okay, Keysight has tied up with Intel, and we are demonstrating live in terms of the rolling ball in our booth. How it gets disrupted if the time criticality is not met versus met. Okay, you may want to visit that demonstration after this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our esteemed panelists. Very grateful for your time, very grateful for the candid answers, and for giving us very actionable intel on what we can do going forth. So I would like to thank the panel. A please round of applause to all the participants. Come. Okay.
Hello everyone, I welcome you to the session 5G Accelerating the Enterprise Digital Transformation. So we'll start this session with a keynote from Mr. Vishi Ramaswamy, Vice President 5G and Digital Solutions, Tata Communications. So may you please come on the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So I'll take about 10 minutes. I'll take about 10 minutes just to give you my view on what 5G can do to accelerate digital transformation. So I am Vishi Ramaswamy. I handle 5G private network initiatives for Tata Communications. So, when we say digital transformation, it means different things for different people. First thing people think about is to look at customer experience transformation. Somebody else may look at bringing in multiple channels. I want to bring in a digital channel for interaction with the customer. I want to do a digital channel for selling my products, etc. It could also mean that I'm going to use automation to change the process or increase the efficiency of the process that I am doing. And it could also mean that I'm changing my business model to mean different things. So it could all mean different things for different people. But ultimate aim for whatever you do with this, the ultimate aim is to look at either one or both of increasing the revenue and reducing your costs. So that's about all. So that's how you focus on. And probably digital transformation would be telling you to see what is the most efficient way that you move from point A to point B, from wherever you are today to where you want to reach. How fast are you able to move, and what can technology do to help you reach there faster? I think that's what matters for enterprises. All the things that are written there are all of them are important. It's not that one of them is more important than the other. But then, as I said, the ultimate aim is to either increase revenue or reduce cost for your operations, and that's all it matters. So for that, there are multiple underlying technologies that have to come into play for you to realize any or all of those goals, right? You require an always connected type of a network for you to have a digital transformation. You require your compute and network power to be on demand. It has to be secure, right? It has to ensure that you are able to do mobile first. And the reason is because mobile network reaches people faster than probably any other way of communicating with them. So there are multiple underlying technologies, underlying imperatives for you to achieve or do before you achieve your results of the digital transformation, right? And one of the key fabric, if you look at which connects all of these things, is the connectivity. If you have to have always on, if you want to have a mobile first, if you want to do secure, if you want to do on demand, all of these things require a stable and a reliable connectivity as the base. So, if I peel the layers of the onion, first we require enhanced efficiency of processes for the enterprise. You have to increase the revenue. For doing that, there are certain methods that you need to follow. You need to have a better customer experience. You need to provide a better customer experience. You need to use digital channels. You need to do automation and all that. Then you come down one level below. For doing all of them, there is a set of digital imperatives that I have written in this slide. And then if I go one layer below that, you require a extremely reliable, good connectivity, right? Finally, all of this will not work if you do not get the connectivity part right in this entire transformation journey, right? And so far, if you look at, it's not that digital transformation has not been happening. It's not that it's been waiting for us to get 5G into the game for you to do the digital transformation. So far, digital transformation has been happening, but then there have been quite a lot of compromises on the way that things are being done today with whatever is the available type of technology. It could be wired connections that you do, could be any other type of wireless connection that you are using. There have been initiatives that have happened, but then probably the capability has not been used the fullest. You know, the full length of what you can walk has not been achieved because you were not having fairly reliable connectivity, number one. Second thing is it was not available where you want, when you want, right? I think these were some of the probably the limitations of what we were doing till now, what enterprises were probably living with. And then, 5G comes in to say that I would, probably help you solve that problem, whatever are the issues that were there with the earlier generations of connectivity by way of reliability, by way of available on time, available at the place that you want, at the level of SLA, so to say, that you want. 5G promises that I'll be able to deliver this to you. And one of the key things that is enabling all of these things is moving away from a best effort type of a connectivity to a reliable connectivity, and that gets enabled because with 5G, one of the key differentiators is the network becomes aware of the application that is driving it. So you are running your digital transformation with various types of applications that you are going to be doing, and you can make the network aware of the type of application that I am running on top. On the reverse, you make the application aware of the type of network that you are providing it. So the application can adjust, can adapt itself to the nature of connectivity that is available, and that's something that 5G gets to deliver. So you can look at what that 5G fabric is made up of for a good digital transformation. You will of course require some sort of an access network, you require some core network, etc. I'm sure that some of the panel members will talk about all of that. You will require some reliable devices. Then you need to ensure that all of them have got some sort of an edge computing platform where you are able to do the computation, all the digital transformation applications can run. You expose this entire combination of the device network and the compute together so that as a network, as a service, as a set of APIs, so that the application and the data analytics that uses these data or manages this digital transformation, maybe an automation application or it could be a video analytics application, whatever is the application that is there, through the connectivity, you expose that through set of APIs as a service, and on top you have the application, the data platform which consumes these things. So essentially you are sort of delinking or abstracting out the network, at the same time providing the required level of reliability on the network, making the application and the network aware of each other. So that's what essentially we are attempting to do with respect to the 5G connectivity to enable digital transformation. There are a certain set of key features that you need to ensure that is followed when you run this digital transformation. Number one is you need to have a very strong edge-based analytics platform. You cannot do this without having an edge-based analytics platform. And you have to have a set of as I was mentioning last time around the awareness of the application and the network about each other, right? That's another important factor that you need to do, right? And the key outcomes that you would get out of it, as I said earlier, would be something to do with increasing your efficiency. Can you do things faster? Can I reduce the amount of human touch that comes in between, and so on and so forth. So this is what you get out of doing bringing in a 5G network inside your digital transformation. Just to give you some sort of a view of the numbers, there is a GSMA report I'm sure that many of you would have read, which talks about by about 2030 you will have about of the order of 2.5 trillion would be the economic value of the 5G. 5G will enable an economic a value of about 2.5 trillion. Three industries, manufacturing, logistics and health together would cater to more than half of that, economic value. Now, if you have to really unlock that type of a value, you need to ensure that, a 5G enabled digital transformation is in place for you to run this whole thing. And finally, some of the key trends that we observe, I've just listed some of the trends as there are lots of trials happening around the world to link. So finally, an enterprise, when they buy a 5G network from us, they are not going to look at the 5G network per se. For them, what is important is the type of application that you put on top of it and what is the problem that that particular application solves. So one of the key trends is that there are a lot of trials to look at by deploying the 5G network, what is the level of efficiency that you are able to gain? What is the level of returns on investment that you are able to achieve? So there are quite a lot of trials happening around the world. There are a few countries, the Americas, a lot of countries in Europe, and some parts of Asia are already doing some of these trials, and I'm hoping that India would soon step into those set of trials, right? Now, some of the industry verticals which are taking probably a priority over the others, manufacturing industry driven by automotives primarily has been probably in the forefront. And we are also seeing a lot of adoption from people who are in metals and mines. Now, there are logistics companies, seaports, airports, warehouses, etc. And also lots of sports venues. They are all the people who are either already started deploying into production or they are doing some amount of work with respect to trying some of their digital transformation initiatives on top of the 5G network, right? And in my view, to summarize, the opportunity is here and now. It is not that it's going to be somewhere away a few years out. In my view, it is here and now. And there is a lot of innovation that is there to be done and a lot of returns to be achieved using this 5G as a primary transformation agent for digital transformation. So the opportunity is here and now. So hence, friends, it's important for us to look at what we can do with our respective industry using 5G and then link that to your digital transformation. And thank you. That's all I have for me. Do we have time for any questions or?
Thank you. May I now invite the panelists to be on the stage? Hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rahul Rekhi. I'm a partner with KPMG. And it's a pleasure to be here moderating this esteemed panel. So I think that was a good keynote, and thanks for that. As we move on, everyone knows that the potential of 5G is immense, and with major telecom companies now looking at rolling 5G, commercially rolling 5G across India, the kind of use cases enterprises are looking at are multiple, spanning across AI, robotics, IoT, and so on. There are benefits with respect to enhanced mobile broadband, ultra-reliable low-latency communication, obviously helping into use cases with respect to smart cities, smart homes, connected enterprises, industrial automation, and many more. This provides a unique opportunity to telcos as well as technos to come together and develop use cases, not only for a particular industry, but also across industries. So let us now take this opportunity to understand a bit more on how 5G can accelerate the digital transformation of companies. I will request my panelists to start with a brief introduction and also simultaneously talk on a very interesting topic on digital transformation initiatives being taken by companies to integrate their front, back, and mid offices. What are the key considerations which enterprises should ensure to undertake that this integration is successful using digital transformation? So may I go one after the other and request fellow panelists to take this up. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mahalingam. I represent a company called Netcon. We specialize in system integration. We set up networks for large factories, airports, and smart cities, and we enable implementation of many use cases for the customers. So today we are talking about 5G, how 5G can accelerate the digital transformation. Thanks to the broadband, today broadband and 4G, the cellular connectivities, the smartphones, today the businesses who are customer focused, like businesses like retail, hospitality, travel, they've been disrupted heavily by digital transformation because of the connectivity. And even in manufacturing companies, the customer-focused business operations like their CRM or their partner portal, the partner management, these operations have been, there has been significant digital transformation adoption. However, their back-end functions, like if you take a factory, the production process or the mining operations or several other use cases are there which are not, which has not been, the digital transformation has not been adopted in such applications. The primary reason for this is lack of connectivity. See, today you have connectivity options. If you take a factory, we have connectivity options like you have wired connection or a Wi-Fi connection. Today, these connectivity options are not very much suitable for some of these high bandwidth intensive, low latency applications like your video-based sensors, even robots, and few other applications. Few other use cases cannot be implemented effectively on the current connectivity methods. So 5G provides the solution for all this. So 5G provides high-speed connectivity, high-speed, low latency, and reliable connectivity, which can enable multiple use cases in these industries, especially the manufacturing. See, I do believe that 5G is the only enabler at present, as the technologies, considering the technologies available today. 5G is the only enabler that can provide, that can make a factory into a complete smart digital factory. And it can solve all the connectivity needs of the factory. So I do believe that adoption of 5G in industries, in especially factories, manufacturing, and similar industries will accelerate the digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here. I'm Magnus Urbring from Ericsson. So driving digitalization in enterprises is, I think, a great task and has lots of potential going forward. Many things to consider, but also lots of value to derive from it. At Ericsson, we started in this area in 2015 when our research group started a program called 5G for Industries. We went out with key companies and not with the incentive to educate them on 5G primarily, of course we did that, but primarily to understand how do they operate their workshop today and what can we gain by step-by-step onboarding cases to wireless domain. And bear in mind then the factories are there. So you don't do a swap of the factory. You start step by step to onboard some cases. Let me give you an example. In one of our own factories, we have pneumatic screwdrivers. We have over 1,000 of them. And by simply putting on a sensor, so we could measure how much the device is being used, we could then proactively say, when should we quickly change this to a new unit and proactively do a touch-up. So instead of having the screwdriver breaking down and have a stop in the production flow and then at a higher cost repair it, we proactively just did a touch of it. And since we could plan that, the interruption was not important, right? There was no interruption to speak of. Now, very quickly, when the people in the factory saw this, there was no way going back. But once we had that, the engineers started to think, how about if we also log what torque is being used when they apply it, the torque to one particular bolt? And so they did that. And all of a sudden, they know exactly what torque is being used for every bolt in that product. And now they know that it's designed according to the specifications. And all of a sudden, the product quality goes up. And before you know it, you derived a completely different value from where you started with. And how do you get to this? By being data-driven, collect more data. And this you can do with the wireless system. You can be flexible where you put your sensors. You can be flexible how much data you bring in. And you can have a factory that is reconfigurable without having the cost to redraw or rewire your wires. So much more opportunities becoming data-driven, being agile and flexible in your, in this case, factory as you digitalize.
Hi, good afternoon. Balram from Sterlite Technologies. We are the leading fiber manufacturer in the country. We are also into networking as well as in a services domain, rolling out certain networks primarily for telcos as well as for private enterprises. My understanding about, actually this is the entire 5G needs are emerging from enterprise segments, or primarily from digital transformation journey which every enterprise is trying to drive. Digital transformation is a very big industry and which is actually relying on underlying infrastructure which will be provided by 5G. And digital transformation is globally is roughly around a 2 trillion market. But in this entire 2 trillion market, the execution of that entire digital transformation journey will be dependent on infrastructure which will be delivered through 5G. Just to add or give you, in this entire industry, there are many use cases which are getting discussed across the industry. 100 plus use cases which are under development, but the top 3 or top 4 which will be driving innovation in next couple of years is primarily around how the smart manufacturing is coming into a play, which will enable on a real-time basis in terms of capturing information and driving efficiencies into their real-time production environment. There will be a use case which is primarily driven by logistics. So logistics supply chain is going to be one of the leading adopter of this entire technology going forward. My fellow colleagues have already spoken about the entire infrastructure which will be required by in terms of digitizing the entire process innovation which is involved in any workforce or a workload management which is primarily towards people or human involved in the entire process, so that we can start digitizing the practice which will enable or which will reduce or bring the efficiency or reduce the operational cost for the organization. So these are some of the innovations which will drive the adoption of 5G primarily in the country as well as across the world. While we were trying to digitize this entire infrastructure, I just want to give you an example. In a present environment, the existing commercial networks or existing networks, we are not able to resolve the low latency or a zero latency issues which is required in a manufacturing process, which is happening in our factory alone. capturing information from different sensors involved in the entire manufacturing process on a real-time basis, and passing that information, which enables us taking some of decisions and not losing our production. Even if we lose a 2 or 3 days of our production in a year, it's a huge loss to the entire industry. We will, with 5G coming in, with the private network coming in, it will give a lot of boost to the entire industry. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Pete Wyman. I'm with HFCL. My background is HFCL is a manufacturer of optical fiber and cable, and we have an increasing and growing business in communication solutions, including Wi-Fi and 5G. My background's optical fiber and cable. I am no expert on 5G. I am proud to say that I have many colleagues at HFCL, including here at IMC, who are experts on it. But I do have a couple things that I can bring to the table here. One is I've spent a quarter of a century in manufacturing. You've heard from some of the other panelists some of the benefits we expect to see from 5G. The issue that we run into in manufacturing is we can't put sensors everywhere with the current bandwidth we have. Wi-Fi doesn't have the distance. It's too many wires to run. You can start to collect data. You know, in our processes right now, we get the finished product and we figure out that what happened, but we don't know how we got there. And ubiquitous sensors, ubiquitous IoT can help us understand how we got there, find the torque on that bolt, find exactly, you know, rather than saying the controls are supposed to be telling a particular machine what to do, is it actually doing it? Well, instead of figuring it out from the conclusion, the product that you made, you can figure it out in real time. Other benefits of 5G in manufacturing will include increased sustainability, better measurement of energy usage, and also one thing that I think people are just starting to take advantage of is using the ultra-low latency to do proximity sensing and increase safety in the manufacturing process. As we add more automation, being able to tell if that machine is too near a person will be a new use case for 5G that will evolve. For the overall topic of digital transformation, this is something that's already begun throughout the industry. It's a journey that most companies have been on. And I think the most important thing to remember about it is it's a tool. It's not what your company does. It's a tool to help your company do what it does better. And when applying that tool, you know, it's not a magic incantation to make your business better. Like anything, you need to identify where you want to go, identify the gaps between where you are and that end state, and most importantly, dedicate the right resources to make sure that you can get there quickly. You know, we'll have a lot more data, but it doesn't change the business fundamentals of good planning and good goals and figuring out where you want to go and remembering it's a powerful tool, but just a tool. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, my name is Prateek. I'm representing Jio. To us, digital transformation is not one technology, right? Connectivity, including 5G, yes, but so is cloud, IoT, robotics, AI, big data, and so on. There are huge number of technologies, and when an enterprise is trying to transform themselves, make themselves relevant in the new world, they are struggling to figure out what do they do and how do they use these technologies to create value for themselves and for their customers. To us, I think three things are required for an organization to do a successful digital transformation. One starts with ownership. Who's driving the digital transformation agenda? If it's not the CEO, if it's not the board, chances are that that transformation journey will not be successful. So I think the first point of ownership is most paramount in doing this transformation. Second, what is the organization that is supporting it? I've seen two kinds of companies. Companies which create a small innovation lab, get a chief digital officer, and say, go and transform the organization. And that this team works in isolation of the rest of the organization. The other model is where you integrate digital as part of every department, because every department is transforming. And we've seen that the companies that adopt the latter model of integrating digital and projects, programs in each department rather than running it in isolation have succeeded, have done better than the ones who have created a isolated unit and called it a digital innovations hub or what have you. The third, I think, as Peter said, is a journey. It's a marathon. But marathon can't be run like a marathon. It has to be run like sprints. So you have to pick quick wins, celebrate, and because that gives an immense amount of benefit both to the organization as well as to the people driving it. So it's very important that you break that marathon into small sprints, celebrate success, and that energizes the whole organization to drive bigger, longer agendas. So that to us, it's organization, ownership, and execution, and that will help an organization transform themselves digitally. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Rochak Kapoor. I'm representing Vodafone Idea. It's always tough when 5 people ahead of you and all experts have answered the same question. And it exhausts almost everything else, so I'll think on my feet and talk based on my experience of running digital transformation initiatives within my organization, as well as dealing or managing them with our customers. Pratik talked about 3, I'll add 2 more. Okay. The first one, absolutely on the spot, what Pratik said, it has to come from the top. In a recent survey, or as our Ready for Next program that we ran for MSMEs, more than 15,000 MSMEs have responded to the survey. More than 90% of the MSMEs, which have been rated as high on digital and successful, they've almost all of them stated that they have been successful because the initiative has been run by the top. It has been owned by the top. So absolutely on the spot, that is the first thing. Not only it has to be run from the top, the goals and objectives have to be absolutely clear. So that's number 1. Number 2, absolutely aligned with what Pratik said, the organization and the operations. Just adding that part to it. By organization, it is the people, the structure, the skills. By operations, all of us, our organizations have legacy silos. That needs to be absolutely taken care of, right? On alignment with the objectives, and these silos need to be broken. Different ways of working needs to happen, and that can only happen from the top. The third, any transformation initiative requires an ecosystem of partners that the organization needs to collaborate with. So the selection of these ecosystems of partners is another important imperative. The fourth one that I think is also extremely important here is the business KPIs that the organization measures. Today, we all measure, if I'm a telco, I measure specific KPIs, right? My network performance, okay, what is my speed, what is my throughput, uplink, downlink, error rates, all that stuff. The digital transformation initiatives will require a reassessment of what are the business KPIs you're measuring and driving. That's a very important rethink required. And finally, you have to be open to a multi-vendor environment. It aligns along with the ecosystem of partners, but extremely important, one partner, one vendor cannot do everything, right? So these 5 elements, I think, are the core things, and this is what we have practiced in Vodafone Idea as well, as we have run some of the transformation initiatives bit by bit, like Pratik said, divide them, right? So we have looked at internal transformation, and we have looked at external transformation, which is facing towards the customers, right? And that is the division and clarity we had when we undertook these initiatives. It's a journey which we divided into different bits and pieces, and each element as it happened, we are celebrating that within the organization. With that, I'll hand over to Alok, and I think he has an even tougher job than me now, having covered almost quite a few aspects. Let's see what comes from him.
Yeah, thanks for the acknowledgement, Rochak. So hi, my name is Alok. I'm part of Airtel. when we talk of digital transformation, everybody talks about it. I think for anybody, and this is enterprise, telcos, or anybody, A, it's a very long journey, typically going for years. And B, it cuts across the entire organization. To my mind, the success parameter for any such journey is two, which is more important than the others. One, we constantly answer the question, what does it solve for? Are we trying to reach to more customers? Is it improving my customers' touchpoint experience, etc., etc.? So as long as we keep this introspection real all the time, it solves a lot of problems, because then you're able to prioritize out of the ocean called digital transformation. That's one. B, with the evolving ecosystem, I think it is a lot of players, a lot of ecosystem is involved, and hence the question of what do you do on your own and where you sort of partner on others' innovation to deliver something. I think these are the two most important questions in my mind for digital transformation. 5G is a part of it. We've all talked about it. It obviously unlocks a lot many new things, a lot many use cases, because it has higher bandwidth, lower latency, ABCD, and all of that. Nobody really knows what works eventually. And again, I think a lot of collaboration, a lot of experiment needs to be done, again on those two lines, that what real problem can one or the other use case solve, and B, can it create that impact, and can it align to the KPIs that I think Prateek and Rochak also talked about. So that's what I think it is for me.
Yeah, I think very good thoughts. And though Rochak was saying that it's a difficult task, both Rochak and Alok were able to take it up very well. So maybe Rochak, I'll come back to you again. Private versus public networks. What do you think organizations will go in for, or is there a combination which people will look at?
I don't think that is a debate at all in my mind, because in the end, it is what an enterprise wants to do, wants to accomplish out of it, that will define what they need. Both the options are available. Both will work, but they'll work to solve a particular problem. So the enterprise needs to be very clear, what are they trying to solve, and based on that, the answer will emerge.
Okay. Prateek, how do you think NAS helps enterprises in their digital journey?
I think it's a question similar to private versus public. I think enterprises, and as Rochak said, they're trying to solve a problem. They're not trying to become a telecom operator, right? And that problem needs to be solved for, and it needs to get delivered by somebody who knows how to run a network. I think we are seeing in this digital transformation journey, people are sticking more and more to the core. We heard about partnerships, decide where to draw a line and where to get partners. This is this in the same continuum. I think the enterprises will more than welcome somebody else running that network for them, while they derive the benefits that accrue, be it with a private, public, or hybrid network. And I think that's where network as a service is there. Companies will stick more to their core. If they're in FMCG, if they're in logistics, that's what they want to do. They want to reap the benefits that accrue with 5G, and that's what they will lean on to experts to get that service. So it's actually, if anybody in this country decides to do a network and run themselves as enterprise, it's a failure of this panel and failure of all companies who are in this space, that the enterprises have to resort to that.
I think quite an interesting observation. So let's look at how the future unfolds. Mahalingam, one point. Do you think CSPs are increasing their efforts to meet the current requirements, network requirements, from where you look at it, before I go back to that?
See, today, the current network requirements, definitely it has changed. For multiple use cases, for example, the use cases are becoming much complex and requires more bandwidth, it requires more reliability. For example, if you take a factory, today factory, you have multiple networks in a factory. So you have a SCADA network which connects multiple machines together, or it automates the industry. And also you have an enterprise network which collects data from the factory floor and take it to the enterprise internet. And I mean, you have multiple networks. So enterprises want one unified network that meets every needs. And I think 5G is one such option for them. See, 5G supports, for example, network function virtualization, network slicing, and other functions, which which enables multiple use cases, including industrial automation or connecting machines together, or low latency applications, high reliable applications can be realized using 5G networks. So I do not know where the cloud service provider is coming into picture here. CSP, you mean cloud service? Okay, the telecom service providers, yeah. So the telecom service providers, definitely they will, they should implement or they should look at the changing requirements of the enterprises. And that is where I do believe that the private networks, the private 5G networks come into play, where the network within a factory are designed and implemented to suit multiple applications, whereas the outdoor applications, like your 4G or 5G networks on the for connecting your mobile devices, that are designed in a different way. So I think the telecom service providers are looking into both providing a public network which is suitable for the changing the demands of the different use cases, and also they are looking at the private network deployment which meets the different use cases for the enterprises.
Thank you, thanks. Any viewpoint from you, Prateek, Rochak, on this?
Well, I agree with what Maha has said. Enterprise A versus Enterprise B, and within Enterprise A itself, location 1 versus location 2. What gets deployed will depend on what that particular use case or the requirements are. For example, one premise may have a requirement of a security and surveillance, requiring high definition cameras, AI analytics and everything, and the requirement to have the data resident within the enterprise premises. That's a use case for a private network, provided it meets the ROI requirements. Otherwise, some other solution needs to be found. In the end, everything has to make commercial sense for an enterprise. Another location, maybe same enterprise or different enterprise. There's nothing which is so time sensitive. The data can go all the way to the cloud or to a private cloud. Decisions can happen there, can come back. No impact on resilience, no impact on the applications. It's no sensitivity to time. It's not very bandwidth or speed throughput intensive. It could be run on a public network as well, right? So again, like I said initially, it's not one or the other. It is what I need and what I need to solve, right? And second, most important, is it a commercial viable way of solving it? That needs to be assessed by the enterprise.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think I'll request now Magnus, Peter and Balram to take 1 minute each to bring out how 5G is going to enable or aid emerging technologies like AI, MI, IoT. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. Fundamental parts of 5G, right? If we take the IoT part first, we now have different categories of IoT. We have broadband, we have massive IoT, we have the short delay, the URLLC, we have time-critical IoT, supporting time-sensitive networks as examples, right? So that community of different categories of IoT devices are there specifically to cater for different needs in enterprises. And all categories, I argue, if you take a factory, will be there depending on what kind of problem they're going to support. Then you mentioned AI, machine learning, and so forth. It's absolutely part of it. It's part of the system itself. It's part of how the systems are being managed and controlled. We talk now about going forward about intent-driven systems where the operator declares an intent and this system shall automatically adapt to the parameter settings needed to fulfill that intent. That's a technology area that's emerging, but there will be a long continuation here with these technology factors coming about more and more. Absolutely.
So I think just to add, the important factor for us is what we are trying to solve and what is a problem statement for these enterprises. Primarily, is this a problem statement related to productivity loss, which we are trying to solve, or is that a problem related to cost structure or operation efficiencies, or are we trying to solve a problem related to reliability? All those factors will define what path all these enterprises are going to take. And definitely all these use cases around be it IoT or be it AI, ML is important, because ultimately all these use cases are actually trying to bring digitization or automation in some or the other form in terms of improving or bringing efficiency into the existing enterprises. As we speak, I think the largest problem which as an industry which we have to solve, roughly 27 billion odd devices are already connected on the internet. How we are going to solve the problem related to reliability, how we are going to solve problem related to security, or how we are going to solve the problem related to operation efficiency will drive the adoption of 5G going forward.
I largely agree with what both Magnus and Ballram have to say, and there's another part of the answer, which is, I don't know. They don't know either. We need the apps. We need the evolution. We need to ask the users what data will be most useful to them. Just preventative maintenance on a screwdriver becoming a major benefit. I think part of it is, yes, you need to have the support from the top down for digital transformation, but you also need to talk to the user base, the people on the ground in your enterprise, and say, what don't you have right now that you need? And then work with the analytics platforms, work with the AI to add that. There's a lot of interest in VR and AR for things like maintenance and virtual visiting and that kind of stuff. But is it a toy, or does it add value to the person who has to solve the problem on the front line?
Great. I think one last question to Alok. How do you think telcos will vary their products and services to meet the current needs? The portfolio of the product services.
Okay, so I think three parts, the way I think about it is, I think one part is the core connectivity part, which enables everything else. As we all know, there's no perfect North Star for that. This is an evolving space. There are places where it is bad. There are places where it's brilliant. And I think this is an evolving thing, which is obviously fueled by a lot of expansion, fiber, investment, spectrum, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that whole evolution of the network from one to the other will continue to happen. I think there are two other parts which is there, and I think Prateek also talked about it a bit. One part is some of these solutions for a customer or for enterprises is typically becoming a problem solver. So he needs A, B, C things, network being one of those things to solve a problem. He doesn't really care, and he doesn't want to deal with the difficult ecosystem of dealing with A plus B plus C. And therefore, he wants somebody to own this and offer him as a simple service consumable, which I think in the previous one, we also talked about network as a service. That's, I think, that other important part. And the last part, I feel, which needs to change maybe a bit more, where we need to do a lot more, what we have not done is, that eventually it's an experience that we are trying to create. I don't think any one person can create that experience all on its own, especially when we talk about B2B and enterprises. And hence, a wireline, a broadband, a 5G, et cetera, is a combination not only from one person, but in partnership with others that comes needs to come together to create that experience and that deliverable. I think these are the three things which I feel we need to do more.
I think, sorry. Yeah, please.
If you look at the ICT adoption in India, it's 1.3% of the GDP compared to China at 2.4, US at 4.3. And is that a demand problem or a supply problem? To us, it's very clear it's not a demand problem. Ability to spend exists. Service providers have not done a good job of supplying. And what do I mean by supplying? I think we're all culprits here of using acronyms, which do not actually mean anything to the end customer. We do not speak the customer language. And as a result, for example, if you say CRM, think of that real estate broker who's got 7 employees. He has no clue what CRM means. So you've already lost him in your first conversation. But if you tell him that, this allows you to keep your customer records at one place so that when the leave and license agreement is coming up for renewal, you will get a reminder. I think he understands that. So I think more than the product portfolio, it's also how we package it. The adoption is 1.3% and not 2.6 because we've not done a good job. So I think it's incumbent on us to not just reimagine what products and services, but reimagine how it's sold.
I think very interesting thoughts. We need to be working together and we need to be working and talking the language of customers. And at the same time, thinking of new use cases, obviously because now the technology will support many more of them. So let us see what the future has for us. But everyone agrees that 5G is going to transform enterprises and the adoption hopefully increases significantly beyond that 1.3%. So I think thank you everyone for being a part of this panel and look forward to interact with you more. Thank you.
Please stay for a group picture and to receive the mementos, please.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'll request you all to please be seated. We'll be starting the next session in about 3 to 4 minutes, please. Thank you. Hi everyone, good afternoon. We're just beginning the session in a minute, please. So, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So now we'll be starting this next session, that is growth code for edge computing and data centers. For that, initially we'll be having a keynote and followed by a panel discussion. For the keynote, I'd like to request Mr. Michael Todold, who is Chief Technologist Telco for Red Hat Asia Pacific, to please come on the stage and take the dais, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's fantastic to be back. I was here in November 2019 for the IMC that was at that time in Iowa City. At that time, I was amazed how you can build an exhibition out of nowhere, because I think it was just built on, on an empty field. They put some big tents and they created that giant event, which in fact, all my colleagues tell me was bigger than this one. Okay, so it's very good to be back. And in the second event, what is very nice here is what has changed is the vibrancy, I think, of the what's going to come out of India. I was really impressed. I went to several booths, and many of the Indian companies now, they're not just going to consume, the telco products from other companies, but what I feel now, and I think that's clearly the ambition of the country, is to make more of it and build more of it. So it's really good to be back and to see all of this change. So now let's talk about a little bit, one of the other frontier for the industry, which is to some extent, the edge computing. And if you think about what are, the use cases that are required, the type of application that you would put, in an edge computing, in a computing data center at the edge, these are kind of the characteristics, the main features that they have. Either you're looking for a very short, closed loop reaction time. You want to react quickly to, to some event, to some data, or you're looking to be independent of any, centralized control plane, centralized computing. You cannot depend, on centralized public clouds or even private clouds. You want it completely decentralized. And last but not least, for some of the use cases, you need to process the data close to where is it produced, because to some extent, if you backhaul all the traffic to the center of the network, is going to be more expensive overall, and in fact, it's worth to have this decentralized computing architecture. So these are the kind of, let's say, major characteristics, I would say, for edge computing applications. And if we look at the use cases, so my personal thinking, and I think that's also shared by some of the other speakers that I've seen at the event, is probably going to turn, video analytics in general is going to be, one of the biggest use cases, because it has two of the characteristics that I mentioned on the previous slide. First of all, in some of the video analytics use cases, for example, if you are talking about, checking the quality in a manufacturing plant, maybe you have to halt the production very quickly. You cannot wait because, it's rolling at high speed. So you need this fast reaction time. And secondly, we are talking about video. Video is a large amount of data, especially if you have, you need to inspect a board and you have a high resolution image. So it's probably not conceivable that you can backhaul all of the, all of the cameras, the video stream of all of the camera to a centralized location. So this use case around video analytics, there are different ways to use it, whether it's in retail, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's also, for gaming, etc., is one of those that, clearly requires, processing of data at the edge. But we're not sure. I think nobody in the industry today is sure and knows, what's going to be the killer app at the edge. We still have yet to discover that. So the first telcos, have started to invest in edge computing, but I think nobody in the industry can say, oh yeah, this is definitely the killer use case. Maybe it's video analytics for retail or manufacturing, okay? So what does it mean? It means that since you don't know what's going to be the killer use case, and deploying something at the edge is something expensive, because you have, by definition, multiple locations. You need, it's not a centralized, by definition, decentralized deployments are more expensive than centralized deployments. So it's expensive, which means that whatever you deploy at the edge as a telco now, it has to be flexible, because you're not sure about the use case. So one of the advice that we give, to the telcos is, you should not deploy something that only can do one thing, because then there's a high risk you make a mistake about the use case. So the platform play in the edge is very important. The advice we give to telcos is to deploy a very flexible platform where you can let's say deploy today's use cases as well as tomorrow's use cases. And also what's very important to understand is that, okay, we're going to talk about we're talking about edge computing, which are applications running at the edge, but any application like this is going to have also a centralized part, which is either maybe hosted in a private cloud, or maybe for, a lot of enterprises are going to host the centralized command and control part, maybe in public clouds. But as an enterprise, and as a customer of a telco service provider, I don't want to have to deal with too many platforms. I don't want to develop my application one way because it's on the telco edge, and another way because it's going to run on a public cloud, because I have one part of my application which is also on the public cloud. Which means that the applications, okay, there is an edge computing part, but the reality is the application is going to span public clouds, private clouds, as well as many edge computing data centers. So for a telco service provider to be attractive to this type of, to enterprise, he needs to build out a platform, who is attractive to developers, because in the end, the developers are going to make these applications. And also a platform that is popular, where you have a lot of development tools, you can run a lot of databases, a lot of PaaS components, all of the things that you need to build an application, including edge applications. So the popularity of the platform is very important. And now we are going to step back a little bit and not just talk about edge computing, but in general of what's happening at the edge for a telco now and what's going to happen going forward. So what we are interested here in this session is mostly the big box on the right-hand side, which is edge computing. Okay, which is to offer, computing capabilities at the edge for enterprises, or also to develop some other, consumer applications, which requires, the low latency. But the reality is that the telco, they have to deploy other things at the edge. They have to deploy a distributed mobile core to give that low latency. You have to get out of the core and get into the app, so you have to have a distributed mobile core, that's compulsory. And the other thing, some of them, and I think, well, this whole event is about Open RAN to some extent as well, some of them will also start deploying virtualized, let's say, radio access network, the box on the left. So it makes sense as well for a telco to look at these workloads all together. So at the edge, the near edge, where typically this kind of thing is going to be hosted, you are going to see this type of deployments, okay? And instead of building one platform for your RAN, another platform, let's say for your distributed mobile core, and a third platform for your edge computing, to some extent, for cost savings, consistent operations, less learning for your own teams, it makes sense to look at, a single telco cloud platform to host all of these workloads. Now, let's unzoom further. There, as I said earlier, let's say the dark boxes here, this is where the enterprise is going to host the application. As I said earlier, there's going to be, of course, an edge computing part to the app, but there will be also a centralized part to the app, which is very likely to be deployed on public clouds. That's what I'm showing as a public cloud footprint below, okay? And then the telco has also OSS, BSS applications. So you can further unzoom that, and again, for a telco service provider, it makes sense to offer the same kind of platform where enterprises and himself can deploy an application and run them. Again, consistent operations, faster time to market and all these kind of things. But so the only problem, let's say, one of the big problem of a telco in edge computing is that usually telcos, they're not good at selling cloud computing. They're selling telecommunication services usually, and they are more or less good. Usually, most telcos, they're not very good at selling virtual machines, database as a service, a hosted messaging queue, hosted Kubernetes clusters. Usually, they don't know how to do that. So usually what they do for the edge computing part, most of them, in fact, they have started to do a partnership with the public cloud provider, whether it's Microsoft, AWS, or Azure. And in fact, they're doing this in cooperation because the public cloud service provider, they know how to do that, how to sell it, and they have customers already. Okay, so that's kind of no choice. Everybody is doing that. So you could say, oh, if I want a single platform, I'm going to take everything from a public cloud service provider. That's what the public cloud service provider would like telcos to do, telco service provider. Of course, maybe that's not what you should do. There are several issues with that. First of all, it runs against the DNA. Public cloud service provider, they're very good at centralized stuff. That's where they're coming from. In fact, when we deal with them, we kind of find out they don't really want to do the edge stuff because, it's not so profitable. It's a lot of issues. Secondly, and I think this is very important to India in general, there's a problem of national sovereignty if this cloud is not made in India or is maybe not controlled completely by India. So there's a problem of national sovereignty, okay? So in fact, there are other alternatives. This is what we call the open hybrid cloud, is that in fact you can have a platform that can run natively on servers at the edge, or that can run on top of public clouds, including of public cloud edge, like the AWS Outpost, the AWS Wavelength, etc. Okay? So, and we have cases like this. For example, well, there's a famous case of AWS Wavelength in Verizon, which is in fact deploying, have this type of partnership, but then they are also running this type of platform on top of the AWS Wavelength. Okay. Recently, in fact, Airtel also made an announcement with IBM about having a partnership using the IBM cloud to reuse the knowledge of the IBM cloud. But again, then there is also a platform that they offer on top of that, which can make enterprises independent of the public cloud, running on top. So this is, in fact, what kind of advice we give to the telco service provider. Look for such kind of platforms which can run of all of these footprints. And Edge is one of these footprints, but not the only one. And this can make, your offering at least very attractive to the enterprises because they will have the same development environment, the same runtime, on all the footprints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tudor, for providing a great insight on the current state as well as the future of edge computing. Thank you. So now, moving forward, I'd like to request Mr. Sumit Kapoor, Director India, KPMG India, to kindly come on the stage and commence this panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Sorry, we can all join. I'll introduce on the stage. Thank you to Mr. Tudor. I think it was a great presentation. A lot of insights came out of that, and I think at the back of that we can start this session. So we have our esteemed panel here. We have Mr. Mandar Kulkarni, who's the Chief Product Officer Cloud for Reliance Jio. We have Mr. Ganesh Lakshmi Narayanan, who's the CEO for Enterprise Bharti Airtel. We have Mr. V. Ramesh, Director Enterprise BSNL. We have Mr. Sunil Kumar Upalla, Director Data Science, Ericsson Global AI Accelerator. And we have Mr. Rolf Brink, who is the founder and non-executive director at Esperitas. He wears many hats. So he is also a consultant technologist at Boston, India. He's project lead for immersion cooling project for Open Compute and CEO at Promotion, which is a consulting business. I think a lot has been said on the edge computing. What we are going to discuss today is about the growth code for edge computing in India. At the back of 5G, there are a lot of technology applications, which will have or which will, search the growth, path for data, and we need to rethink, especially for India, on how we are going to manage those, those situations. Now, edge computing obviously, seeks to undo what cloud has done, and Mr. Michael has spoken at length about it. And there are cost impacts, there are sustainability impacts, and we are going to pick up some of those conversations today. But before we start, I think maybe I'll request Mr. Mandar to give his views quickly on the topic, and we'll go round table, and then we'll probably have some questions for you.
Thanks, Sumit. So in a way, life has come full circle in IT. Most of the centralized computing started with mainframe. Then we had distributed computing through PC, and then the client-server architecture. So the client-server architecture kind of got consolidated through cloud, right, where everybody believed that the intelligence will be at the center. But over last few years, we were already seeing a trend of that phenomena changing. It started with IoT, where the data generation at least got democratized. No longer there were humans who were only generating data, who were coding, who were building databases, so on and so forth. But machines and a large number of distributed devices started making that data. And I think what we are seeing is the next generation of that, more realization that you don't only need to process the data, you don't only need to collect the data at the edge, but there is a necessity to process that data at the edge as well. Right? And I'll give you a couple of examples where we are clearly seeing that happening more and more. IoT is generating a lot of data, but as Michael demonstrated, there are clear-cut use cases where that data need to be processed locally, whether it is large volume of data that you don't want to transmit, or whether there is a real-time action that needs to be taken. Autonomous car, or manufacturing, warehouse, healthcare. There are many, many use cases that are becoming very clear. But I'm sure Sunil will talk a little bit more about that. But a lot of this is driven by the AI that you want to embed in the edge. So what we are clearly seeing is that edge is driven by two things. A distribution of generation of data. It's no longer humans, but it's the devices which are generating a huge amount of data. So you want to process that data where it is getting generated. So that's number one. Number two, you just don't want that data to be statically transferred and then you will do latent processing. Because of AI, you want to take certain actions, and that's where edge is becoming very critical. So I think these two things are very, very prominent that are driving whole edge ecosystem. And with 5G, finally, you have the ability to make that happen. This demand was there for some time, but what we are clearly seeing is as you can move the even network to the edge, so your round trip times are going to get reduced, and that's where you will see a lot of edge rollouts that are happening, where you are actually processing the data at the edge, but your telecommunication edge, your 5G is also getting distributed. And that is allowing this whole latency to come down.
Thank you. I think these are some good insights. The couple of things that we can take away from that is obviously devices are generating more and more data. And I think the handling capacity, the processing capacity has to go up, and the latency has to come down, especially in the AI a world which will be dominated by IoT and many other technologies like cloud gaming, which has to run on edge, and obviously 5G will enable that. Maybe I should request Mr. Ganesh now to give his views on the topic.
Thank you. My name is Ganesh, and I think I know one thing. We haven't figured out how to make money on edge cloud yet, because we all know what we know, which is there's going to be a lot of data being generated. We know that this data has to be managed locally. We know what technology we need to put in. If not, we don't know. People like Red Hat are teaching us how to do it. So all that we know, but we really don't know how to make money yet. But we believe that like a lot of things telecom has done, if we build the right infrastructure, there are smarter people who will figure out what solutions to build. And I think the startup community in India is pretty vibrant to build the right solution. So I'll give you some examples from our own learning. So what we have decided as Airtel is we will build this edge cloud infrastructure on the same telecom infrastructure we have. So with 50 edge locations enabled, we should be able to deliver 15 to 20 milliseconds latency. And when we go full hog and make this edge cloud infrastructure available across the country, we should be able to give 5 to 10 milliseconds latency. And the cost of this compute will be much, much smaller than what we pay for the hyperscalers today. So the edge cloud cost will be much, much cheaper than the public cloud cost today. So that also we know. So what we are doing is to build this infrastructure and inviting all the startup ecosystem to build solutions on top of it. So one startup is building a drone-based security, which is a phenomenal use case if it comes live. One startup is building an AR, VR to see tourist locations sitting from your home, right? And tomorrow when all of you have 5G in your mobile phones and want to beam yourself, you all need compute closer to your mobile phone because you won't be sitting here physically in 3 years from now. You'll all be beaming yourself to IMC. That'll happen. And that will need a lot of compute towards the edge. And that also we think, we can monetize. So while this technology is pretty mature and we know what this could do, we have to figure out how to make money. Our approach is we will build it so that the smarter people can build solutions on top of it. But I think that'll happen. That'll definitely happen.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. I think some good points, and you have summarized it well as well. But I just have a question for you on that. So Mr. Ganesh, what I understand, you haven't found the way to make money yet. But what are the investments that you will need as a telco to actually introduce the edge data centers in the context of India, building up that infrastructure, and then what's a long-term plan? Because I do understand you're coming from a point of view where you want to build the road and then somebody will make a car.
Absolutely.
So but we have to obviously understand the future view. So maybe some points on that.
Yeah, so let's look at what it takes to build an edge cloud alive. One of it which we already have. One is the data centers. We have our edge data centers today. We have 120 of them and it's growing. So we definitely have that investment done. Second is the 5G core investment into these data centers to make sure the 5G network comes alive. That's being rolled out along with the spectrum. Third is you need hardware. Now today, hardware is not totally optimized for edge. If you ask the OEMs, they'll just say, take the server and put it there. We don't want that. We actually want, the optimized hardware which can do video analytics better than doing fresh computing. So which we are working with OEMs. I think so the next investment we're going to need is this whole hardware we need. On top of it, we're going to need something like Red Hat to provide container as a service. And then we need a platform which we are now working together with IBM as a visual inspection platform. So with that, we have the full stack. So we have the roads, we have the lanes, we have the signals, we have everything. Now the cars have to be designed and made, and I'm sure that'll happen. But we are putting that investment in, and we are putting that investment in end to end, all the way. So we are bringing an ecosystem of partners like Red Hat, like IBM, and we're also making sure that we're inviting the startups to test trial this road so that the future things will be ready for them. So this investment is definitely moving from telco, and as Airtel at least we have decided that it's our responsibility to bring the edge cloud infrastructure to India, and this one we are committed to.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ganesh. Maybe I'll now request Mr. V. Ramesh to come in with his views.
Any specific question?
So maybe you can start with your views on the growth code for edge computing in India, but maybe you can actually build on what Mr. Ganesh is saying. Would you be also of the same view that telcos need to build the road and then somebody will build the killer use case, like Mr. Michael put it, or is there another way where you can do it simultaneously, or telcos can play another role?
Definitely, TSP point of view, edge is a new concept, and with evolution of 5G network and rollout of 5G services in couple of years, definitely there will be a lot of scope is there for bringing the better services and customer experiences. Basically, edge computing is nothing but bringing the data center to the customer premises, nearer to the customer premises, so that we can enhance the customer experiences and data evaluation, data evaluating and experience analyzing and other things. All these aspects can be done and give a better service to the customer. And BSNL point of view, we have got a lot of wide network across India, and we have got around 3,000 plus telephone exchanges, and we are seeing some opportunities in the partnership model, so that we would like to tie up with the different vendors, because basically edge services cannot be run by a single operator. So multiple services, vendors are very much required, and multiple services are there, so that ecosystems needs to be developed for that. And BSNL point of view, we are looking at the opportunities with the vendors, and we are still at an evaluation stage only, and how to move forward. But my feeling at present, it is not yet matured. Within couple of years, definitely there will be a lot of maturity. Definitely it will happen. As far as this Gartner study says that by 2025, 75% of the data will be processed outside of the traditional data centers. So that is the means the edge requirement is always there, and definitely all the telcos are looking at it, and it is also through partnership model, and BSNL also looking forward in that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. Mr. Ramesh, thank you so much. How do you anticipate 5G playing a role in transformation of edge, and will it expedite the adoption of edge in the context of India?
Definitely 5G is one of the main network, and based on that this edge can be rolled out. Taking the services to the nearest to the customer point means the requirement is latency, and the bandwidth requirement is very much required at the last mile. So with this invention of the 5G services, that will be met, and definitely these edge services, edge computing services will be there in the pipeline. And if you see the IoT devices, at present almost 30 billion IoT devices are connected to the web. And almost every second there will be addition of 150 to 200 IoT devices. With this explosion, and there is an explosion of the data is there, and because of that, data analytics are very much required nearer to the customer premises. And definitely that is quite possible only the rolling out of the edge computing nearer to the customer premises, so that the better customer feeling and enhancement experience can be given to the customer. And definitely with this rollout of the 5G services, there will be a lot of ecosystems will get developed, and a lot of changes do happen. And anyhow, Airtel is moving forward, as Mr. Ganeshan is telling us. Already they are planning to roll out the edge services. And hopefully within a couple of years, we will also look forward in that direction.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramesh. I think may I request now Mr. Sunil Lupalla to bring his perspective from an OEM perspective.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm not repeating what is edge computing and all. We have already, from the eminent speakers and panelists, we already heard about that. So let me start with the data point. From our Ericsson Mobility Report, in 2025, we are talking about 160 exabytes of mobile data traffic per month. So what we are talking about here is each company, whether it's operators or the OEMs like us, or the cloud providers, we are going to analyze the data. And we are talking about latency. Let me double click on that. So when we talk about the latency, technically we talk about transmission latency, compute latency and control latency. What 5G is talking about is taking care of the transmission latency. If you're not building the systems, AI-based systems, ML-based systems, software systems, to take care of the control and computational latency, we can't see what are the applications we are seeing in the exhibition booths, right? So what that brings us to us is, one is the 5G, and edge computing is a good combination, because edge computing is there even before 5G, right? Most of you have seen that as well. But what we are talking about is a good combination which opens up a lot of opportunities for us. And as other panelists were talking about, there's not like a single player who can do the end-to-end stack. So we have operators in place, other panelists talked about, and then we are going to play a role along with the cloud players. Once we have an open environment, we need to provide the developers an environment as a service. That's where we are going towards, right? So the second point on that, to double click on the AI and ML aspects, what we are talking about, building the services close to the edge, right? So what cache we need to do, and based on the application, whether it's a gaming application, whether it is a real autonomous car application kind of a thing, the main trade-off, we can't completely take away the cloud operators, right? So what really matters is, based on the application, how much of compute we need to do at the edge. At the same time, how do you do the trade-off of the edge versus the cloud is a real point. Even though there are a lot of benefits we are talking about from the edge compute, the cost point of it, and even from the performance point of it, we see a lot of definitely the benefits, but it opens up a lot of challenges, especially from the maintenance point of it. If the data is at one place, it is easy to maintain for us, right? So, but when we are talking about this edge one, we need to have the different layer to maintain these aspects. So I'm sure with the advances, what we are talking about, a lot of automation, cognitive aspects, we will take care of those and convert those challenges into opportunities to really deploy the applications we are talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Sunil. I think some really brilliant points that came out. So the right model is very important in your view. You know, what will be the most optimized edge, public cloud, private cloud model that's going to be there? I think Mr. Michael also spoke about it in his keynote. But one important thing is the security posture. Now, everybody is worried about, you know, what's going to happen to security when there is edge. You know, so there are different spectrums of that. There is Netflix that does edge computing, then there is Tesla that does edge computing. So a Tesla car is almost an edge node.
Yes.
But are you putting steering in the hand and compromising on your security posture? What's your view on that?
So I'll add the question security and privacy, because both of them are going together, right? So there are two aspects. One, all of us know that we are talking about GDPR or maybe the data protection bill even in India for us. So every land of rule, we need to follow those regulations. That is one. For following those rules, it's coming handy for us, because the reason is we don't really require to push every data to a data center. Instead, you process at the edge, right? That is an advantage from a security point of it, because we are not moving entire data to the cloud. But at the same time, we need to take care of a lot of physical security related one, because when we talk about security, we talk about mostly the software security layer only, or maybe at the end of the product, we talk about security, right? But we need to think from the physical security till the hardware security and the software security. And in this context of security and privacy, especially on the edge computing, what comes to my mind is especially the new advances in the federated learning. That means don't push entire data. You don't have permission. Even if you want to push the entire data to the cloud and process it, you don't have permission because of all these data regulations. But you can share that analysis. That's where the federated learning, maybe from the privacy perspective, differential privacy, these are the things people are really exploring. Not to share the data, at the same time we are not missing out on the analytics part of it. So we do have advantage of that. At the same time, it brings us more challenging aspect of how do you take care of the security aspects at a different levels.
Thank you. I think very, very different and you know, good perspective on that. Maybe now it's time to move on to Mr. Rolf. I think you wear many hats, so I think you can bring your view on this matter as well, from a global point of view.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, first of all, the rollout of 5G is going to drastically increase the data transmission, right? So we're talking not about a small increase, we're talking about tenfold of data processing which needs to be captured somewhere. My colleague Dev Tyagi yesterday was on a panel. He was asking the audience to make a photograph, and he was using that as a point to make, to start explaining what happens with the data in relation to automated networks and network optimization, right? And the analogy there is, well, 15 years ago, I could not imagine doing so much with this mobile device, right? Making the pictures. You could not imagine the amount of data that is being generated today. We are in front of a new era with 5G, where the possibilities are going to be drastically increased again. And that will have consequences for how the networks are going to be operated, what the network should look like. So the dependence on core data centers is something that we're going to need to look at, right? So having all that additional data being transmitted over the core networks is simply not feasible. So there's greater dependence on edge facilities, edge locations. Now, the paradigm shift is now that the closer we can get to the data points, to the end, to the edge of the network, the more effective we're going to be with data processing, with smart applications, with AI. And there is a challenge associated with it. And it's a very practical challenge. And it relates to something that all the IT manufacturers and chip manufacturers are dealing with today, which is the increase in power of chipsets, the increase in density, the increase in data processing demand. Right now, we cannot deploy more edge facilities in the way that we used to. And I'm referring to air cooling infrastructures. New chips that are coming out are dependent on liquid cooling in one shape or form, right? There are many forms, many shapes of liquid cooling, and this is an essential technology to enable the edge to be rolled out, right? You cannot build a traditional data center here around the corner in the center of New Delhi. But with liquid cooling you can. And that is a paradigm shift which a lot of the industry platforms are currently focused at. So my role in Open Compute is to facilitate harmonization between a lot of manufacturers, IT equipment OEMs, liquid cooling solution vendors and manufacturers, data center builders, you name it, to facilitate this new era of liquid cooling. So it's not just a new era of 5G, it's a new era of a completely different type of infrastructure. Now, one of these infrastructures, there is I've been involved with a project with one of the leading telcos here in India as well, where we deployed immersion cooling in an edge facility, where we're running throughout the year with a PUE of less than 1.07. So with an average PUE here in India of 2.0, it is important to understand the energy impact as well. So the energy savings that are required, you cannot just tenfold your facilities, your IT base, and expect the power infrastructure to support that straight away, especially in the edge, where power envelopes are usually small. So these kind of energy savings are critical to enable these this edge rollout.
Oh, thank you. I think that's a brilliant perspective, which will bring us to the topic of sustainability. But I'll park it just for the brief bit. I think I would like to understand a little bit more about, because you wear multiple hats, as I said. You work with Boston India as well. And in your view, this widespread adoption that's almost at the brink in India with edge data center. How would this impact, the growth that is being envisaged in the hyperscaler industry? How is that going to, counter for each other? And do you think India is really ready at this point, from your outside in perspective?
Well, that's a very good question, right? So, yeah, I'm not from India. I'm having that proper outside-in perspective, and I think the challenges here in India are not unique, but India is challenged by a multitude of factors, right? The climate, the temperature, power infrastructure, the volume of people, the volume of endpoints here is really high. The density of end users is really high here. So with the ambitious plans with the 5G rollout, you're going to need a lot of innovation, right? And I think India is one of the best places to do such an ambitious rollout of 5G. I think India can play a fundamental role in the world, being showing the way of adoption of new technologies, new innovations, sustainability as well, and the usage profile of these kind of edge locations. What you're going to see is a larger enablement of artificial intelligence, smart applications that we consider already smart today, but come on, it's going to be a lot smarter, right? So. And this is all going to be enabled by the telcos, and telcos are literally in the driving seat here. Self-driving cars, imagine that here in India. Would be fantastic, right?
Well, we are still struggling with ADAS, but that's fine. I completely get your point. But let me just push one question back to Mandar yourself. And Rolf has spoken about some industries where there are use cases, but what are the industries where you see there are real use cases in India for edge computing?
Right. Rolf interestingly talked about one of the other problems that we at Jio are trying to solve, right? So from the edge perspective, essentially, what are we doing to actually address those things, right? And at a very high level, we have broken the overall edge into three parts. One, we are rolling out the service provider edges, as mostly known as telco edges, which will go with 5G, right? Which will sit along with our 5G rollout. We will provide edge compute. But to address the density problem that Rolf talked about, right? What we are also doing is we are rolling out what we are calling as commercial edge zones. So these are the edge zones which are in high density areas, right? Very similar to what you do in telecom, but we are bringing that compute, we are pushing it to that commercial zones, whether it is business district or whether you have media where you need a lot of compute. So that's the commercial edge zones rollout that we are doing. And a third is more customer edge zones rollout. So these are basically what we are deploying with our customers who want edge in their own manufacturing facility or edge in their own retail facilities or maybe in their hospitals. So these three edge rollouts is what Jio is currently doing. Now, why these three models, right? Actually, that ties back to what even Michael mentioned, because these three type of edges actually cater to different use cases. So at the service provider, we are deploying the multi-tenant edges, right? And that's what we are doing with collaboration in partnership with our hyperscale partners. These are going to be more general purpose. They will deliver services as the customers want. The commercial edge zones are the ones that would largely have the specific use cases, which will have a lot of ISV solutions, startup solutions running. But in my opinion, the interesting thing that we are doing is we are actually pushing the edge right in customers' premise. And those are specific vertical use cases that you talked about. There are 3 or 4 which are very popular that we are seeing. Some of them are in pilot, I would say. One, and we are also demonstrating one of them in our booth, is a warehouse automation. Right? As the large India is becoming very big on retail, and you see a lot of warehouses getting rolled out. We have a group company called Adverb, which actually does the robotic automation. Now, for that robotic automation to work, you need the entire process to happen at the warehouse. So what we have done is we have actually built this Adverb as a part of solution on our edge, where the entire warehouse automation can be shipped as an edge in different warehouses. The second interesting use case that we are seeing is in retail, right? And retail, where there are shops where they want a continuous feedback, right? For example, a customer enters and getting the customer information is very simple. But on customers' real-time interaction in that store, you want that feedback to go to a store manager or to the tailor, where they can provide a custom tailor-made option, tailor-made offer for that customer. So that kind of interesting use cases using Reliance Retail, some of those use cases we have rolled out. The third one that we are also demonstrating here at the booth is healthcare. Imagine there is an accident and you have an ambulance that is gone in, right? Typically, whatever, between 15, 20, half an hour time that the ambulance ships a patient to the hospital, there is a lot of time you are just providing some care to that patient. Those ambulances have an opportunity to be edge enabled, where you can
do some of the testing, you can provide at least some kind of medical assistance. By the time the patient reaches the hospital, a lot of diagnostic is done and the treatment can start. So that's the mobile edge, right? So I think these are the three type of edge cases we are seeing. As things evolve, there are more use cases which would come. And I agree with what Ganesh mentioned, that basically we will end up building the roads, and a lot of startups, a lot of ISVs would actually build different type of cars.
Thank you, Mr. Mandar. I think that brings me to Ganesh. I think you spoke about, absolutely, what telcos are trying to do. But what are the challenges that you are facing in building up or scaling up these data centers? Is it just the cost versus, a cost issue? Are there other infrastructure-related challenges, or there is a policy challenge as well here?
I think the challenge is mindset. And I'll tell you that example that today, if you look at the digitization of India, it is made possible by the lowest absolute telecom cost you could get in any country, right? I mean, 199, 299 we get, right? So when this happens, we need to have a way to price it at that price point. We should be able to price it per drone at 2,000 rupees. So we give them connectivity plus data compute at that price point. Or a car at a price point which makes sense, or an agricultural device has to be priced at per device, per drone, per car, per connected healthcare device. For that, I need help. We need help from people like Ericsson. We need help from people like Red Hat and Dell and HP. They should be charging us that way as well. So we can bring this price down. If we could do that, then this will actually take off in a big way. Today, we have to spend all the capex to pay Ericsson, to Red Hat, and then we need to charge per month to these people. That, if we can make together as an ecosystem, this will take off in a big way. And that is the mindset shift we really need. That's a challenge we are facing today.
Wonderful. I think that's very concise and at the challenge thrown to the OEMs as well, to change the business models and the operating models, work together with the telcos to get this right, and especially in the Indian context, the capital expenditure model doesn't really work anymore. I think Sunil, you want to respond to that probably?
Yes, I do agree, because the traditional charging models are not going to work out, and the subscription based, or we need to innovate new models as the 5G and edge computing is also evolved, and we are completely echoing that thought on that.
I think we are towards the closing of the session, but before we do, I think one very important question, which we parked earlier on sustainability, and we would probably want everybody's view on the panel on the sustainability question. Edge data centers are going to consume a lot of power, right? And probably it's an understatement when I say a lot. So, how are the organizations currently looking, and what should they be doing to be really environmentally sustainable? And this is not just purely from a power point of view. There's also a lot of hardware that's going to come in. So there is a perspective of of managing that hardware as well. So maybe if you can give some views, and then we'll just probably go round table from there to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very passionate about sustainability, and look, when we're looking at these data centers, yes, they're power hungry, right? So it is. I'm first of all very happy to hear from everybody's introduction, by the way, that everybody is so focused on collaboration, because to do this well, collaboration is key, right? Nobody can achieve society's goals with India becoming carbon neutral in 2050. Ambitious goal, right, for a country like India. You need to work together, you need to collaborate, you need to work together with partners and competitors alike, right? And that is something that I'm very conscious of. And I'm very glad to hear that everybody is. Obviously, the edge facilities need to be as energy efficient as possible, right? Immersion is therefore one of the key ingredients to achieve these goals, immersion cooling that is, which allows that simplicity also with plugging into an edge, being more flexible and more creative with finding locations to do that. Boston IT Solutions, which who I'm here with as well, is showcasing one of these examples, and various of these examples of how you can do this. Is also leading the way in creating these kind of collaborations across industries and making sure that you can actually reap the maximum benefits of today's challenges, right? The technology is out there, the collaboration, the platforms are out there. All that we need to do is set those goals and achieve them together.
Right. So before we even start, have sustainable goals and align them. All right. So Mr. Ramesh, do you have a perspective on sustainability as well?
As Mr. Brink told, this sustainability means this any operator wants to roll out the edge services. Basically, investment costs are there. Multi-vendor environment is also there. So hardware vendors and software vendors as well as application partners, OT operation terminal, IoT devices vendors, IoT application vendors and platform vendors. So all the vendors in a collaborative manner, if you take them forward and we can invest, definitely we can move forward. In addition to that, there are operational costs also very much involved in this sustainability. So as Mr. Brink told that liquid cooling and other things, operation cost definitely it will come down. And security is also one of the main concern because end points are getting connected and a lot of cyber security threats also may happen. A lot of investments need to have kept in that direction also. So these are all the main issues. At present, BSNL point of view, we are only evaluating and we are looking for any partnership model to move forward in this direction. To start with, we are also doing some type of 5G and 4G captive private networks type of thing. And in that only the spectrum and other things we are tying up with the vendors so that the connectivity will be given to the in that captive area like manufacturing unit or mining sector or in these areas, so that automation, manufacturing automation units can also can be used. IoT devices can be connected through this captive network. So these services will be rolled out. This is not purely entirely edge services to be provided by BSNL, but it is the end captive private operator. They can have their own systems so that they can roll out those services. So multiple models are there. Ultimately, collaboration is the key.
Thank you. So Mr. Ganesh, maybe I'll ask you differently. Will collaboration drive sustainability, or will sustainability question drive collaboration?
I'm a sales guy. I'm not smart enough to understand that question, but I will answer from my side. It's an exciting time to be a telco. We have to bring 5G. We have to roll out across the country. We have to make sure that the price is low enough for everybody to do it. And we have to make it on sustainable power. It's a very interesting challenge. I think the telecom industry is up for it. We really need help. We have our own problems to solve. So today I was looking at a device which is meant for edge, which somebody has created. 3/4 of the device is a fan. So imagine how much power that is generating. Pretty soon we will be building data centers inside ocean, because that is when we'll have less power. There's no cooling involved. So we definitely need help. I think to me the right answer is the first one. Collaboration is the only way we can survive. If you want us to build a sustainable telecom infrastructure for a country like ours, help us build sustainable power. We will do it.
Thank you. Brilliant perspective. We can absorb the appreciation for that. Thank you so much. And so, Mr. Mandar, for you, maybe how's policy currently in India, and how's the policy making in India driving sustainability? And is it really promoting edge data centers in your view, or there's a lot to do still?
I think there is at least some distance to go. And that's probably because change of the computing model that I referred to. Right? You would see clearly the guys who are building data centers, whether it is us, Airtel and other players, have adopted sustainability for their data centers. Green power, solar, renewable, there are credits that are given. So I think to a certain extent we have addressed how do you incentivize green in data center. But edge are not going to be that large. Edge consumption is not going to be multiple of megawatts. These are small data centers. And that's where what Rolf talked about, right? Immersion cooling or those alternate ways of cooling, not provide large air conditioners, is going to be critical. And I don't think policy currently is incentivizing that enough, right? For green power and all that. See, edges are going to be very small. So you'll not be able to do green power in certain cases. Where it is available, you will do it. But for that small edge, you will not be able to do that in itself. So the alternate mechanisms of cooling, how do you incentivize that, will actually determine a lot of sustainability in edge.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sunil, from an OEM perspective, I know we spoke about collaboration, and once you have sold the data centers to the telcos, it becomes their problem now, to manage emissions, manage cooling. So what is it that OEMs are really doing in this regard to make it easier for the telcos for easy adoption?
So I'll bring a top-down approach. So one is on the sustainability goals are there right from the United Nations goal, not just only for the organization, right, for the country level as well. And the other end, we need to empower our developers level as well, right? So otherwise it will be there as a goals at the beginning, maybe at a CTO level or a VP level only, right? So why I'm saying that point is when the collaboration is coming, let's say we are dependent on, let's say, some hardware providers like Intel and NVIDIA. And there are a lot of innovations are happening at that level as well. So what we are arguing there is, especially from the sustainability point of it, even take a simple AI model. So it's there, AI is there everywhere now. So once the model is developed, we thought it is done, right? But from a sustainability point of it, we have seen right from choosing the architecture of a deep learning model, and then really developing and training is one part and deployment is a separate part, right? So we need to see the end-to-end perspective, not just only develop the model and then leave it, right? So, and there are a lot of advances from both from hardware and software. Unless we train our entire ecosystem to use and leverage that, and with the collaboration as the key I'm talking about, so then only we can really sustain that and reach our sustainability goals. So we are completely on that from the OEM perspective as well.
Thank you. I think it's safe to summarize, and time also is probably pushing us to that there is a lot of appetite in India, and there's a lot of demand that's going to drive edge data centers. Obviously, a policy, policy level decisions and policy making to enable that, along with right incentives, must come a long way. Collaboration is the key. It has to be done in a sustainable way. Obviously, the larger perspective is to get the customer experience, and ultimate aim should be that which Mr. Ramesh also brought in, right optimized level of cloud, and the best perspective that I liked is progress over perfection. You build the road, you will find people who are going to build better, faster, more efficient cars to run on the road, and then you go back to the drawing board, build bigger roads. Right, so I think we can sum up at that, and thank you so much to the panel members for being part of this discussion. It was really insightful, and I'm sure all of us are taking a lot back to think about. Yes, please.
We are ready. We'll provision VMs for you at the edge. Yes.
It will be as simple as actually deploying on cloud, and that's the perspective that you will have. You will not be able to differentiate. It's just the distributed computing that you will get. So it will be similar to public cloud, yes.
Okay. So is it like so it's not just about going and deploying a virtual machine probably and start developing. It's about having that entire ecosystem where I can have a database, I can have so that's, you're saying that's all ready today that I can go and do that.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, please.
So that one question is that so many data center, because it's a edge data center. Okay, so IoT edge and data center or a cloud was a journey to facilitate that IoT enabled applications. Now the thing is, using this particular 5G, telcos has to come up with data centers and edge data centers. So data centers require huge power. So many data centers are now being planned. So whether the country has so much of thermal power available, that is a big question because, and then water usage efficiency, power usage efficiency comes later. First of all, where is the power? Whether the country has already given additional powerhouses to feed the power. I think this is a point where we have to understand this, how it will be implemented. Whether it will be a phase-wise or instantly, if let us say everyone start building up a data center, then where is the power?
So the answer is in two parts. First, we don't expect edge to be as large as your primary data center. So they are not going to be your megawatts of power requirement, right? These are going to be smaller footprint. If you build a large data center at the edge, then that doesn't make sense, number one. Number two, it will happen a gradual rollout, right? While we have appetite to build larger roads, it will also be, depend on the consumption, right? So it will be a gradual rollout. See, we have to differentiate between the edge that we need to roll out our 5G, right? That's an investment that we'll anyway make. But the customer edges will actually be driven by the demand and the use case. Ganesh also mentioned an interesting point on monetization, right? So the customer edges also are driven by the monetization and use cases. So they will be gradual. Yeah, I think edge, we have enough power for edge. They are not going to be megawatts of power. And maybe Rolf can add a little bit
Still
more.
data centers, so many data centers are now being planned in India. So where is the power?
I think we need to focus on what data centers would look like, what edge data centers would look like, right? So there are micro centers that are being built. Right. So look, probably Mandar can better answer the question in number of units and and kilowatts, how much of power is going to be needed. But at this particular point in time, Rolf, you want to go for it, please?
Yeah, so one of the things I would like to highlight here is with liquid cooling. Obviously, I've been plugging liquid cooling here now, right? So one of the potentials with liquid cooling is that you can achieve 50% reduction based on what you're currently doing in a new situation. So the reduction from PoE 2.0, which is common here, right? And still efficient to tropical standards, bringing it down to a PoE of 1.07, you're talking about 50% reduction as well, and not even going into the IT savings yet, because that's where you're saving energy as well. So the PoE is even affected on the wrong side of the equation, right? Because the IT equipment becomes more energy efficient. Right. So this is why I emphasize the necessity to engage with innovative technologies, because this growth, you cannot just expand in the way, you're absolutely right with your remarks, right? You cannot just facilitate the growth in the current way of work, because then the power envelopes will not be big enough, and the cooling impact with evaporative cooling, water usage, these kind of metrics will have a serious impact. So that's where the innovative cooling technologies really come in. And if anybody would like to learn more about how these technologies work, there's a whole big team at booth 514 where that can be with the Boston IT services, where they can explain everything about these technologies, right? But this is why it is so critically important.
And also, so you have to also see the compensation that edge data centers would bring with respect to the processing speed. Right now, all that processing would have been done somewhere else, which would have taken much larger, capacity intake, right? But I understand and I get your point where the initial power is going to come from, because all these are levers to reduce and optimize, right? So I don't think we have, where the data centers or edge data centers are being planned, they have a problem. And again, Mandar spoke about the green power, right? So if you generate energy, right? So there are use cases that are being tested in the world where you have to generate clean energy to run these edge data centers before you actually deploy them. So if you have a percentage, and that's again a policy decision that needs to be driven that way, that a certain percentage of edge data centers have to be run on clean and green energy, and a certain percentage can run on your traditional sources of energy.
or just a PU incentive, right?
Absolutely.
What all of us been saying. PU incentive would also bring in lot of innovation. And as you roll out edges, you will see a lot of new technologies coming in. You can't do edges the way you do data center. That's for sure.
And also, just sorry for just one last remark
I think it's
about
very,
this
very,
as
very
well,
topical.
right?
Please go ahead.
I'm passionate about sustainability. Apologies for that. Now, but seriously, when you're talking about liquid cooling, don't forget that the waste product of liquid cooling is heat captured in water, which is a usable medium, right? So even in India, where you're talking about a tropical climate, even here there are industries and other utilities where you can plug in these kind of temperatures of water, use it for preheating scenarios. And so even here in India, where a lot of people from the rest of the world are very skeptical about heat reuse scenarios, it's a big topic in Europe, right? Here in India, maybe not so much because it's tropical climate, but there are reuse applications, which effectively means the energy that you use for the IT gets a second life. And that is also part of a sustainability approach.
Thank you. I think we're safe to wrap up now. Thank you so much for your time, panel members. Thank you for being here.
All the panelists for this great and insightful session. I'd just like to request Mr. Kapoor to kindly felicitate all the panelists with the memento, please. Thank you. And I'd take this opportunity to give this